Jennifer, please confirm you can hear me loud and clear and see my
Yep.
screen as well.
Yeah, loud and clear, and can see your screen.
Can hear you loud and clear. The screen awesome.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So good evening, everyone, and so welcome to today's webinar. Apologies, we had to reschedule yesterday's session. We're going to find a convenient time, which will be communicated to us to have those sessions we missed, we couldn't hold. So for today's session, we'll be looking at running API automation on GitHub Action using Newman. Last week, we talked about Cypress automation. Yeah, so we looked at Cypress automation. Cypress focuses on the UI, and today's zone, which is the API, focuses more on the back end. So the same way we can automate front end, we can also automate back ends. I know for this is more like an advanced training for people who already have experience in software testing or development. However, for the newbies, the aspiring testers, techies, you can also still gain knowledge from this. Like I always say, no knowledge is a waste. If software testing is your career path, then yes, you're in the right place. Just that we are not starting from scratch. For this session, it's assumed we should have experience with the basic concept of API testing, which I won't really be going deep into. So this session we'll be looking at running API automation on GitHub Action using Newman. So for those of us that joined my last webinar on Cypress, if you remember how I was able to, automate a website using Cypress, and I ended up integrating it on GitHub Action and ensure it ran on GitHub Action generated reports. So we are doing the same thing here using API, and the tool we are making use of is Postman. For the UI, the tool we made use of is Cypress, but for the API, the tool we are making use of is Postman to run our tests. All right, so what you will learn today: writing API tests with Postman, running tests with Newman, integrating with GitHub Action, and generating your HTML reports. So for API automation tool sets, these are the tools we need. The first one is the API and the Postman. The Postman is the tool we use in running our API collection, and why Newman is the command line interface for running our Postman collection. Why GitHub Action is the CI/CD pipeline where we automate our scripts. Before we even push on GitHub Action, we can also automate our script on Postman locally. And then finally, which is generating HTML reporter for our visual test results. So for those of us that knew what is API testing, API testing is a type of software testing that focuses on verifying that an application program interface, which is the API, is working as expected. It checks the communication between different software systems, ensuring data is exchanged correctly and securely. So instead of testing the UI, API testing works on the business logic layer, testing requests like get, post, puts, and delete directly. Some of you would have wondered, how is it possible that while shopping on Jumia, I could see payment options like probably maybe Paystack, Flutterwave, and the likes. Some of these are possible via API integration. And some of those activities we carry out on our UI, on our websites, they all respond to API calls. So for example, if you are logging in, you are inputting your email and password and hit the submit button. What you just did is that you've sent a request, and that request is a login request, which has a method. It has a method which is a post, and it has its parameter or body, which is the email and password. And it also has, when you submit that request, you get a response. So when you try to log in on a website and you try the valid credential and you get a success message, all this flow can be tested on the back end using an API, and testing from the API side using Postman tool. Same way when you try to log in with an incorrect password and you get an invalid email, I mean an invalid response or error response, same thing can be confirmed using APIs. All right, so moving on, why do we automate API testing? It saves time. So the same way you automate your website, your UI, run hundreds of test cases in minutes, same thing applies to API testing. And it also ensure consistency. You can catch bug early with it, because sometimes our backend engineers might break things. But by the time you automate your collection, you can easily detect what is working and what's not working. You also support CI/CD pipeline, and you can also validate multiple scenario, test edge cases, come up with both positive and negative scenario, and detect performance issues. So one thing we shouldn't overlook while testing both APIs and UIs is performance, response time, very important. So we can also check or detect performance issues while testing APIs. So moving on, I didn't know my video has been off. So moving on, who automates API? QA engineers, most commonly, especially those skilled in automation. We also have software development engineers in tests. They can write complex automated script and build framework. Backend developers also automates. They sometimes even integrate or contract tests for their APIs. DevOps engineers too may include API tests in their pipeline to monitor service health. All right, so creating API test on Postman. So let me just show us what Postman looks like. So this is a Postman tool, and this is how the UI looks like. On it, you can have different collections. A collection can be different projects, So inside your collection, you have all your requests, the logins, the sign up. Like I mentioned, those activities you perform on the UI, like searching for products, adding to cart, making payments, viewing profile, uploading pictures, all these things can be tested from the API standpoint. So for example, this is a login request, and this is the API URL to test this login. And in software development, the way this works is, we have the backend developers, we have the front-end developers. Ideally, before the front-end developers start consuming API, meaning before they start integrating the front-end with this API, it's expected that QA has tested and confirmed and validated that all the APIs are working. And once QA confirms that APIs are good, working as expected, then they transfer or give a go-ahead to the front-end guys to start consuming. That's why sometimes in development, we have situations where developers first build the UI. Building the UI without integrating with API means that when you launch that URL, what you just see is more like a graphical interface where you can perform actions like login, sign up. When you click buttons, nothing happens, it doesn't respond simply because it hasn't been integrated. So To log in, all I just need is an email and a password. And if I send this request, I get this. So I get a response. Remember when I said you get a response like this login is successful? This is what the users is expected to see at the front end when they log in with a valid email. What if I put a a wrong password and I try to send? I get a message that says invalid credential, kindly provide correct credential. So this is the same behavior when you try to log in on the front end. All right. Where's our slide? Yes, so I was speaking to creating API test in Postman. So the first thing is to create a new collection. The first thing is to create a new collection, which I just showed us, which is for today's section, this is the collection we'll be making use of, the KSOM copy collection. So that has been done. The next thing is to create an environment. So here we create the environment just to store datas and variables in forms of datas. So there are some, let me say, reusable datas that you can just simply store here. You can as well store base URL. So in my collection, you could see that I have my URL here. So I can decide to go to my environment and create a base URL. Call it base URL and pass it here. So what that means is that I can just go to my collection. So instead of, let me duplicate this. So instead of typing in the full URL here, I can just come here and type base URL. Yeah, I'm supposed to save. So if I come back here, you can see it's pointing to my base URL. And this is best practices because assuming you have like, hundreds of collection and tomorrow you need to change the base URL. If you don't go with this approach, what means is that you need to come here and be changing it one after the other. But, following these best practices means if you need to change your base URL, just come to the environment and make the changes here. Then it applies to all your requests in your collection. So that's on environments. Then adding your test scripts. So in my collection, I have the login request here. And the next thing I need to do is to add my scripts. Now, these are more like JavaScript, the good thing is we have, snippets on Postman that you can just click and, add. If I come here, where are the snippets? Yeah, so this snippets, you can see different, snippets. This one checks the response body and the likes. So in my script, I've already added two snippets. One is to check if the status code is 200. And the second one is to check if the status code is, if the response message is returning login successful. So I'm going to run this test now. I just say unauthorized. Okay. I think something was wrong with this. Okay, now, so I was showing us our script. So I ran these tests, and if I click on this drop down and I go to test results, I can see that status code, ideally this status code is meant to fail. For login, the status code we're supposed to be getting is 200 and not 201. 201 is when you create, like sign up, you should get a 201, but when you perform actions like login, it should be a 200. So as a tester, I'm expecting to see a 200. And if I run these tests and it's failed, it shows that I'm doing the right thing and I've been able to spot a bug. Status code is meant to be 200, but what the backend is returning is 201. So that's a bug. Now, the second one I checked for is login successful. If I go to my body, there's a message that says login successful. So anytime I run my request and my script can't fetch this text that says login successful, it's going to fail. So for example, if I'm expecting to see login successfully in my body and I send and my postman is unable to see that script, then it's supposed to fail. So, okay, test results. So, oh, sorry, I didn't type this in 8201. So I send, yeah, so you can see both are passing. So this speaks to adding test scripts in JavaScript, and finally verifying the response message, status code, data, whatever thing you want to verify, you can add it to your scripts. So you can have as many validations you want to add there at the end of the day. So yes, we've been able to create an API test in Postman, created a new collection, created a new environment, add test script, and verify the response message. So moving on, now that we've been able to run our test on Postman, the next phase is to run our test locally using Newman. Remember, we are dealing with three tools: Postman, Newman, and GitHub Action. So the next step is to export our collection and environments so that we can be able to run it local as well as on GitHub Action. And how do you do that? This is our collection. So if I come here and I click on More and Exports, I'm going to export this collection on my local. So it's going to save it in my downloads. Same thing applies to my environment. I come here, click on environment, go to my select the environment and export it. By doing so, you also export it to my downloads folder. So moving on. Now, because I want to run this test locally on my terminal or command prompt for those on Windows, I need to install this npm Newman tool on my laptop. So if you are using either Mac or Windows, you first need to install this Newman. So this is the command to install it. All I just need to do is copy that code and then go to my terminal. So I'm using Mac. This is what my terminal looks like. So I just need to do npm install global Newman, and I hit enter. So this installs it globally on my machine. If I don't install it, I won't be able to run my test locally. So that's been sorted. And once that has been done, then I can proceed to run my collection and environment locally. So to run it, I already have the code here. Let me explain how the code should work. So after downloading both collection and environment on my local, what I did was I created a folder for it in my documents. So I'm going to show us where that folder is. So I created a folder which is this. So inside it, this is the file for the environment, and this is the file for the collection. So I store those both files in my folder. So I have this command to run it locally. So if I come here, I copy this and I go to my terminal and I run this command, the same test that ran. Oh, I didn't show us running it on my Postman. I'm going to show us now. Sorry, skip my mind. So you can see that the tests ran and you can see the iterations, the total test script, the total iteration that executed. Moving back to Postman. So let me quickly show us how to run our collection on Postman. So if I click the three dots on the collection and I click on run, it brings me here so I can, these are the two collections, so the two requests that I'm running, login and get company size ID. So I'm running it manually. I can schedule it. I can run it via CLI. So to run it manually, I just need to click on run cases. So you can see that the two test scripts I added are passing for login and as well as for company size ID. So we have 4 tests in total, and that's the same total number of tests we are seeing on CLI, which is terminal for Mac. All right, that explains running our collection and environment locally. So the final part is the GitHub action. So the same way we did during Cypress, whereby we needed a YAML file so that it can trigger test to run on GitHub action. We need to do the same for API. So I created a YAML file. I named this Cypress. Ideally, let me just give it a name we are familiar with. So I'll call it Newman YAML. Yep. So whichever name you give, it doesn't matter. What matters, what GitHub is looking for is this .yaml extension in front of any file. So that's what triggers it to run on GitHub action. So I mentioned here that on every push to either of these branches, it will trigger a test to run. And the same way we had jobs, steps during Cypress, the same thing applies here. We also needed to install our Newman and as well as our HTML reporter. And the same collection I ran locally, this is it here, which I've also added in my run Postman collection. And finally, upload test report. So this uploads the test reports on the GitHub action artifact section for me. So and before then, I've also created, let me show us a GitHub environment. Where is my GitHub? Yeah, so I've created a GitHub repository for Ksums API automation. So this is where I'll be pushing my updated code to from my local to the GitHub repo so that a new test can run. So back to my CLI. So I've made all my changes, I've saved. So I go back to my terminal. So I'm going to type in commands. First, I need to do a git add to add all my changes. And next, I need to do a commit and add a commit message, which is API automation demo. And finally, I do a git push to my main branch. So once I successfully push, didn't I save? Okay. So let me go back to GitHub. I think I need to make a real change because my file is not updating. So run KSOS API test. What else can I make changes on? I think just this one is fine. So I'll open my terminal. I do a GitHub. Git commits. And I do a git push. So this time around, it's going to trigger our GitHub action. It's push origin main. All right, so we can see our push is successful. So I need to go back to my GitHub action. And now we can see that the pipeline is running, API automation demo. If I click on it, we can see our test is running. So right now it's installing Newman and the HTML reporter. Next, running the collection. Done, finally uploading the test reports. And we could see our test is a pass because we are having a grain. All right, so we have successfully executed our test on, automated our API test on GitHub Action. So next is to show us the reports, the HTML reports. So this is the active part that was uploaded, the post my HTML report, that's the active part name, and this is the file. So I can download this locally to download the HTML file and proceed to my local and open it on my browser also. So this is our test. Total iteration is 1. The test ran only once. And total assertion, these are our test scripts. The total test script we have is 4. And everything passed. Did anyone fail? No. Was anyone skipped? 0. Moving down, we could see the collections, the environment that we used. It's telling us the total run duration, which is 2.5 seconds. And we can see further summary items. Total request was 2. Request script was 2, making it a total script of 4. Total assertion, which is still 4. And yeah, so this is what the HTML reporter looks like for us. So going back to our script. So yes, so this is the GitHub action. I know I explained deeper and last Cypress session. So GitHub action is a continuous integration and continuous delivery platform that allows developers or QAs to automate their software development workflows directly within GitHub repository, which is what we just did. And it enables you to automate tasks like building, testing, deploying application. So what we just did was testing. We automated a task that to test a task. Yes, so creating the GitHub workflow, this is how it looks like, which I already showed us in Visual Studio, our editor, which is this. And also, so reviewing the results, which I already showed us to on GitHub Action, you go to your workflow and click on the task that was automated, the workflow name, then scroll down, you see Artifact and download the reports, which is in form of HTML, and you can view on your browser. So that brings us to the end of today's session. And this is the point where you can ask your questions drop it on the chat, raise your hands if you want to speak, and I'll answer your question to the best of my knowledge. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Ooh.
Okay, guys, it's time for question and answers. I'm sure we do have our questions. Our Q&A box is not filled. Let's ask our questions.
Yeah, the house is so quiet. I think someone is raising hands.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, you can ask your question.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, so I was told that three tools we use in API testings: Postman, GitHub, and the Newman to test locally. So, what's the role of the GitHub again please, in running an API test?
So it's a CI/CD tool that allows for collaboration between engineers, be it QA developers, and it allows us to automate things like build, testing, deployment. It also helps with collaboration and code review as well. So when your developers are building an application, where they collaborate and store their code is on GitHub. Why the GitHub action is where you do things like continuous integration and deployment, where you automate things like your test as a tester. The repository is where they store their code, their files, where they make changes and collaborate and review codes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, answering that my little question, funny question.
Okay, it's a very good question. Thanks for
Thank you.
asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So let me see.
Do we have more hands raised? Yeah, we know that today was an advanced training. Hope it wasn't a lot for us to take in. I know some of you might ask some question, but you'll be like, "Oh, is my question not valid?" Ask the question that way. This is the chance for you to ask your question. So whatever question it is you think you might have, Toby is ready to answer your question. Toby, right?
Yeah, always ready.
Okay, I have one more question.
Okay.
Okay, please, is there more to API testing than what we've just learned tonight? Because what we've learned so far tonight has been quite interesting, clear, and concise. But I just want to know if there's more to API testing than we just did an example of login testing and sign up testing. What
There's
it should the response you should give to us and how we can detect a bug when there's a wrong response. So, but is there more to it?
Yeah, there's more to it. So there's the let me say the beginner phase or the starters phase where you learn how to, run API tests manually, understand how you can convert an API documentation to a Postman collection. As testers, we should be able to even, add request manually. Understand what collections are, what requests are, how environment works. If you open a request like login, understand how to use different methods like get, post, put, patch, delete, how to, use parameters, authentication, headers, bodies. So yes, there's more to it. Like, and that's more like the foundations, the foundation to get into API testing. So once you are conversant with, everything I've talked about for starters, then an individual can now advance into automating API. So same thing applies to like just a manual tester. First understand how to test manually before you start automating your API. So the same thing applies to API testing. Yeah. And again, like if you look at this folder and this collection, it has different folders. So it has, the roles, the authentication where you sign up, login. So each folder has different endpoints. We can come across a project that you have more than 100 endpoints to test. It just depends on how broad the project is. Can also determine the number of requests that you interact with. Yeah.
Thank you once again, mentor.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Toby, and thank you, Beef Boy.
Yeah, yeah,
It's funny.
yeah. If there are no further questions, then I think we can um, for tonight. So what I've just advised is I can share resources too that can, help us get started with the basics of API testing. Then there are also free what they even call them, like website where you can that has mock data where you can practice API testing. So they are not real, but you can simulate everything I've done here on Postman. I'll also share that on the group. Yeah. Adeshola is raising her hand.
Yes, I have a question. Thank you very much for the insightful section. However, you made mention of a commit. What is the function of commit in GitHub and how is it used? And second question, I'm having kind of clash within these two words, Git and GitHub. Are they the same thing?
Yeah, so to the first question, can you rephrase? I'm not sure.
You made mention of commit when you are walking through the GitHub. What's the
Okay.
function of commit in GitHub?
Okay, yeah. So what commit does is for every changes we make, we should. It's more like let me explain in a layman term. It's more like adding a description to what you did. So if you make a changes or maybe you fix a bug or you added a new feature, for example, let's say I added a new script for app properties and I want to push to GitHub. So what the commit message does is it tells other collaborators and developers, it gives them insights to what you worked on. It's just like saying a bug title. When you catch a bug, you give it a title. So when anybody picks that ticket, they see your title. Oh, okay, this is what this bug is all about. Same thing applies to commit message. Just giving a short description of what you worked on. Then to the second question on Git and GitHub. So Git is a version control tool that developers can install locally. Now we have online services or platforms that are built to run on Git. One of them is GitHub. We have others like GitHub, GitLab, Azure, Jenkins. These are online, platform where we can perform Git actions. Let me put it that way. So Git itself is an open source, version control tools that developer use to, install stuff locally, run their tests locally. So by the time you start familiarizing with, automation, we need to be running some Git commands. So you saw me doing like Git add, Git commits, these are Git commands that you familiarize with. But GitHub is just a platform, that we use to, run on Git. And like I said, we have other tools similar to Git, like GitLab, GitHub, Azure, Jenkins, CircleCI, and so many others like that.
Right. Thank you very much for the feedback. Awesome.
You're welcome.
My pleasure.
I was almost saying, Adeshola is not asking questions today. What's good?
I was just like still racking my brain, like automating my brain. It's already in manual testing. I'm trying to put it onto automation. Thank you very much once again.
You're welcome. Then, so quick one before we wrap up. I know many of us, shared our challenges why I'm registering for this mentorship program. So I've started, answering them one after the other. I may not answer yours, but trust me, I've answered it in someone else's, question or challenges. So what we've done is we try to match similar questions or challenges and try to answer them. Either Jennifer or Motarani will share some of this, with us. So let's try and, go through them. And I believe it's going to help us, continue to grow in this field and as we continue to learn and share stories. All right, so over to you, Jennifer. I'm done for tonight.
Thank you so much for tonight's session. It was a lot to take in, to be honest. That's why most of them, just like Adishwala, they're still racking their brain. I understand.
Like seriously.
Yeah, and I'm expecting to see some of our questions when we start to understand it better on the group. The group is always open. This is a mentorship. It's for you to learn. It's for you to ask all your questions, whether you think they are good questions, valid questions, or they are silly. Ask everything. The group is open for us. And although it was a lot to take in today, and I think it is something you can share on LinkedIn. It's part of the process. Is a growth process, yeah. So let's still take it to LinkedIn. Whatever it is we got from tonight, even though it might have been confusing a bit, still share it. It's your story, so own it. Don't leave any part out. So whether it's can somebody is someone saying something?
Yeah, sorry to cut you short. I think we missed question in the Q&A chat. So
Oh,
let me just quickly answer them with the
all
remaining
right.
few
Yeah.
minutes we have. Yeah. So Odunayo asks, how can I link my code with GitHub repository? So first you need to sign up on GitHub, and once you sign up, create your account. The next thing is you create a repository. So once you create that repository, you see like a README or a walkthrough on how you can clone your repository on your local. So for me, after creating my repository, the next thing is to clone that repository on my local machine. So after I've been able to successfully clone it, then I'll be able to push to my repository and also as well as pull into my local from my repository. Then you can also check online steps for this. You see, materials I can also guide you. But if you still need further help, just drop a message on the chat. And what's the difference between API and manual testing? API is a type of testing. Manual testing is basically how you execute your test, whether you're using manual approach, which involves human intervention, or you're automating. So API can be tested manually as well as can also be automated. Okay, what's the difference between Postman and Newman? Postman is a tool that we can use to test our requests, test API, while Newman is a tool that runs on CLI, that's command line interface, On Mac, it's a terminal. On Windows, it's a command prompt. So it's a tool that allows us, run our test on a command line interface. So command line interface basically is an interface where you can execute things based on text. It doesn't have UI. You don't see buttons. You don't see everything is just text. That's basically command line interface. So the same thing applies when you run on GitHub Action. You are not running your tests on the graphical user interface. You are running it on a CLI that's on that GitHub Action or CI/CD pipeline. Okay, for Esther, I've tried to understand API, but it seems it's not fluent. What should I do? What advice is, let's take it from scratch, from the beginning again. Let's take it one after the other, and then with gradual efforts, you understand. Because I always tell people, our level of assimilation differs, and there's nothing wrong with it. What keeps everyone going is that word consistency. So if it takes person A to learn API in few days and it takes another person B 2 weeks or more, the end goal is we both learning and we both acquire that knowledge and we are both making use of it at the end of the day. How do I automate sign up that requires OTP for each call? So the easiest way to automate sign up that requires OTP, if you are testing on your staging, you can ask your developers to create a request that you can use to fetch get OTP. So that's one approach. So by the time you run that sign up request, then there should be another request that you can use to get OTP. And there can also be another request to validate the OTP. So you can have 3 different requests to do this. So if there's feedback, you can just give your developers to help you work on. Another approach is on signing up. On the response body, there will be a field on the response body, there will be a param for OTP. So that's another way to automate sign up that requires OTP. Yeah, so that's all. Over to you, Jennifer.
Okay, so where did I stop? I was motivating us. So okay, guys, you get the gist. Let's take it to LinkedIn, please. I want to see our posts. There's someone that's always posting, and I'm always engaging with her posts. First should be Pelumi. I hope I didn't pronounce your surname wrongly. So I'm just shouting out to her and who someone else again. I've forgotten your name, but Pelumi, I always see your post. So well done, well done. I read your post from the beginning to the end. No matter how long it is, I read everything. Yeah. Okay. I want to see every other person's posts. And ask your questions on the group as well. If you have questions, ask your questions on the group. The recording is going to be shared with us so that we can go over the lessons again. And have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Good night, good night, good night. Thank you so much for all you people have shared with us today.
Yeah, good night, beef boy. Are you selling soya?